It was the seedy, dark side of Hollywood. The part of Hollywood that you just go, why does it have to be like that, you know?
Everybody that worked on this film, we all rolled the dice, thinking the game was fair, but it was rigged. We gambled with our heart and our soul and our artistic ability to make a really good movie, the best we could with what we had.
We were making a movie for probably around $1 million of the Fantastic Four. And you can't do that. You just can't. But we did.
The heart of this film and the intentions behind this film from the people who made the movie, not the business interests, the people who made the movie, their intentions were pure. They wanted to make a great Fantastic Four movie.
This was going to be a breakout movie for a lot of us. We make a film like this about a huge franchise like the Fantastic Four, then you're looking at an opportunity here to go, hey man, you know what? Look guys, we got a shot.
I didn't know then, all of the machinery that had been at work, and that something so absurd like that all this effort and time and all the work that went into making that film, and that it was never going to see the light of day. Strange, pointless, meaningless.
I would hear, this film was never really intended to be a film. And that infuriated me. I said, oh yeah? You watch.
I am Joseph Culp.
My name is Carl Chiarfalio.
Hey there, my name is Jay Underwood.
I'm Kat Green.
I'm Rebecca Staub.
My name's Michael Bailey Smith.
I'm Alex Hyde White. I played Reed Richards.
And I played Dr. Doom.
I played The Thing.
And I played Johnny Storm, the Human Torch.
I played Ben Grimm.
I played Alicia Masters.
And I play Susan Storm.
Hi, I'm Ole Sassone. I was the director of the 1994 Roger Corman film, The Fantastic Four.
Hi, I'm Mark Sykes, and I was the casting assistant.
My name is Glenn Garland. I was the editor.
My name is John Volich. With Everett Burrell, I was co-owner of Optic Nerve Studios that was responsible for the makeup effects for Roger Corman's Fantastic Four.
I'm Jonathan Fernandez, and I was the vice president of marketing at Concord New Horizons.
I'm Chris Gore, and I was the on-set journalist for most of the filming of the Fantastic Four.
I'm Sean Howe. I'm the author of Marvel Comics' The Untold Story.
I'm Lloyd Kaufman, president of Troma Entertainment.
I'm Roger Corman, and I, together with Bert Eichinger, were the executive producers of the original Fantastic Four. The saga of the Fantastic Four started in 1992. Bert Eichinger, a German producer who was a friend of mine, came to me, I think in September or October, I think it was September of that year, and he said he had a problem and maybe I could help him.
I think it was somewhere in the early 90s, maybe 92, I'm not sure. But Bernd Eichinger did approach me and was interested in having Troma Entertainment make the Fantastic Four on a low budget.
He had the option for the Fantastic Four. So he asked me, can you and your guys at the studio make this picture for $1 million and start before the end of the year? And I just remember, it was on a Friday. And I said, let me give it to the guys at the studio. They can work on it over the weekend. Let's meet Monday morning and I'll tell you if we can do it.
Troma Entertainment was well known, and still is well known, for making low-budget movies. The Toxic Avenger is internationally famous. Class of Nukem Highs had sequels, and Sergeant Kabuki Man NYPD is well known. So he thought perhaps Troma could produce the Fantastic Four, and Bernd and I had several conversations.
The guys worked on it, and I said, yes, it's not going to be a $30 million picture, but we can make it look pretty good. He says, it doesn't make any difference. I just have to start shooting.
I was uncomfortable. I'm buddies with Stan Lee, and we have our own characters, and there just didn't seem to be very much in it for us to to make a crappy low-budget movie of something that was kind of a religious thing. It really wasn't terribly exciting, a bit more interesting. Or if I could have made a shitload of money, but there was nothing there for me other than to alienate our fans and possibly alienate Stan Lee.
I knew there was a rush on the set to start the movie for reasons that I didn't know. I just thought, well, isn't that always the case in any Hollywood film? You gotta be done, you gotta meet your budget and your schedule. The reasons for that, of course, came out much later.
When I was first handed the script, I assumed it wasn't going to be ours. Steve Rabner, who was an in-house producer and attorney for Roger, walked up to me in the hall with a smile on his face and handed me this script without saying a word. He knew I had come from a comic book background, having worked in a comic book shop for years, and I collected comic books, so he knew the reaction he was going to get. And I held the script in my hand and it said The Fantastic Four, and I simply thought Universal or Warner Brothers was producing, and I was like, who's doing this? And he said, we are.
There was a lot of excitement at the studio about this movie. New Constantine was gonna be putting in like $750,000. Roger was gonna put in $750,000, so we thought, okay, that's more than normal.
We were told this was gonna play in theaters, so that was really exciting because when I came along, Roger Corman was mainly in the direct-to-home video business. And so this was a film that was gonna play in movie theaters. No one at Roger thought that this film was not gonna be playing across the country.
I was blown away, a little concerned. Obviously, I knew the comic book and I knew Roger very well by this point. I'd grown up on his films. And here was a huge property. You know, the Batman movie had come out, but we were still more or less in the throes of Captain America and the Punisher and these not very successful superhero movies of the 80s.
What the fuck do you call 125 murders in 5 years, huh? Work in progress.
And here's the Fantastic Four on a Roger Corman budget.
At the time, I think our expectation for Marvel characters in movies was pretty low. I think the best thing by then was, maybe the Incredible Hulk show. So that was the best Marvel, character brought to real life, and so our expectations were low. The Captain America movie, for Marvel movies, this was the dark times. So the fact that they were even in costume, the fact that there was even a couple of shots of Mr. Fantastic stretching out his arm, I just sat there as a fan saying, I'll take what I can get.
One of the worst things of my childhood and teen years was Daredevil on The Incredible Hulk and Thor, who I was a huge fan of. And then on The Incredible Hulk, they turn him into a surfer dude who was just embarrassing. It showed that they either didn't care about the comic or they didn't know about it.
So by 1992, it looks like Marvel finally can't lose. Jim Cameron is going to do The Amazing Spider-Man for Carol Co. That's exciting. Wesley Snipes is signed up to be the Black Panther. Wes Craven is all set to direct Doctor Strange. These are big names, and these are going to become big properties. It's sure, they can't lose finally.
So when I read the draft of the script that was circulated early on, that draft embodied early Fantastic Four. I thought it was wonderful.
Gave me the script, and I thought the script was great. I thought the guys, Greg Nebius, the script I thought was spot on. And the first thing I did was go to the Golden Apple comic book store on Melrose Avenue and picked up the reproduction of issue #1. So I wanted it to be as authentic as what Jack Kirby and Stan Lee had envisioned.
The first several drafts, of maybe 4 total, because we move fast, were the Mole Man. Well, as I recall, there was some issue over the rights to the character of the Mole Man. They may have had rights to the Fantastic Four, and it was okay to use Dr. Doom. So the jeweler changed from the Mole Man. Whenever Marvel licenses projects, unless it's an in-house Marvel Studios project, there's a certain limitation put on. You can't just take everybody, otherwise they would have had the rights to the Silver Surfer and the Black Panther and anyone else who'd ever appeared in Fantastic Four. So when they did this, it was a very limited right. And I think it's also suggestive of the fact that Marvel would have preferred the movie never be made. While Steven Spielberg was making Jurassic Park, Roger Corman was making Carnosaur. So Marvel couldn't have been thrilled. So I'm sure they were not going to be generous with licensing any extra characters that weren't very clearly covered in the option in the agreement with New Constantine. And I was relieved early to find out that it was a co-production, and we knew also at the company that when it was a co-production, we knew the money would actually get spent on the movie. So it meant this would be a slightly better film than we were used to, still a little scary.
It was my understanding that New Constantine was going to put up half the money, and then Roger was going to put up the other half. But Roger's half was going to be with services. Like, I don't know how much he was renting his studio for. I don't know how much he was paying some of the people who were on staff. I don't know if he actually put in the budget $850 a week for an editor, or if he actually put down the going rate for an editor, which was probably 3 or 4 times that. So, you know, I'm not sure actually how much Roger ended up putting in.
The hardest thing when you're selling a Roger Corman film is to create brand awareness. What the studios can do is they can put Tom Cruise's face on their poster, say Tom Cruise, and that's a marketing campaign. We couldn't do that. We didn't have stars of that name. But when you came up with a name like the Fantastic Four, and when you create a poster like we did, which was the comic book heroes, we could compete on an equal playing field with the big boys.
We've got a first draft, a deal with New Constantine, and the need for a mold for the thing.
I went in and it was mostly a body look. They took a look at me and they said, yeah, he's the right height, you know, and his eyes are the right color because they want the eyes to show through the mask. And I think I was one of the first ones they called or cast because they needed to make the suit. Only one, because that's what the budget called for, but 2 headpieces. One was all rubber for going through walls and doing fights, and the other one was a servo motor on the inside of a skull mask.
We had to do a complete suit with an animatronic head. We were trying really as hard as possible to remain faithful, basically the Jack Kirby era, where we tried to copy as closely as possible that look, because we kind of felt that was the definitive, classic, period. Tried to modernize it and make it a little bit more realistic and natural. And the comics, always tend to vary a little bit from panel to panel, so there's some room for interpretation. But with The Thing and with Dr. Doom, Kirby was the era that we were really kind of striving for and was our major source of inspiration.
When I went to the guys that made that, I said, look, you got to understand something about The Thing. The Thing is, he's damaged goods. He's psychologically damaged. So I said, we've got to get that in his face. To the credit of the guys that made the head, which was all servo motors, they gave that rubber face expression. And they made you feel like, oh my God, that guy, he's pathetic. He wasn't just a mean, so they could change the expression where he was sad and sympathetic to like clobbering time. And that was brilliant.
I played a lot of bad guys, played a lot of these guys, and I've even had my head crushed, in the movie Casino.
I got your head in a fucking vice. I'll squash your fucking head like a grape.
I was fortunate enough to be casted in the role of Tony Dogs, and he's the guy that gets his head stuck in a vice, and Joe Pesci spits and twists and, until the eyeball pops out.
Then the Dr. Doom suit, a lot of it was just the fabric and cloth. We just had to make like the arms and legs and the helmet for him. And all those were mostly done with vacuum plastic. That we did sculptures of the armor on top of a person, took molds off that, and made some plaster positives, like plaster shapes that we took over to a vacuum machine and made it plastic and riveted it together. Because of the design of Dr. Doom, it was okay to show the rivets, so we didn't even bother to hide those. It kind of fit the style of what we were seeing in the comic books.
Wearing this suit is still one of the great challenges of my acting career thus far. You know, once it was on, and the mask was on, and the tunic and the cape and the belt and the gun and everything was put together, and there I was clanking around the Corman stages. It was no other way to describe it, a grueling experience.
So the casting director on Fantastic Four was Laura Schiff. Laura knew my background in comics, as did Steve Rabner. We released the breakdown in November, which means we went out to agents and managers to let them know, we're making a movie, here are the characters, this is what we need, there's no money, big surprise. And then we received thousands of headshots.
And after we had them come in, we said, you know, this is a good pairing. And that's what you start to do. You start taking pictures down from people that come in with their headshots, and you start laying them side by side. You start looking at them and going, well, that one, that one, that one.
Jay Underwood, if I'm not mistaken, read for the Fantastic Four one time. He was a producer-director read because he had very good credits at that point.
You know what a hatchet is, don't you, Bug?
It's an axe. And it was maybe 2 weeks away from the start of production, with Christmas right in the middle of that.
So I had the audition on December 14th, 1992, and within a few days they had called and just cast me, which was cool. I didn't have to go in for callbacks.
Hey, you Doc? Ready to go?
And then we were shooting by, I think it was December 28th, 1992. So it was a fairly quick process.
And I think part of the terms was you gotta make it quickly. And if a producer like Roger or anybody, if you're gonna make a film, you say, look, you gotta make it quickly, and the money is telling you that, you're gonna make it quickly.
And I really wanted the role for Victor Von Doom, AKA Dr. Doom. And I thought, well, okay, then now I'm gonna pull out all the stops. I went in there and commanded the space. And I came out with this character that commanded space and time. And I just went as far as I could, and I felt a surge of energy. Maybe it was Colossus himself. And it surged up through my body, and I thought, I'm scared, and I love it. and scene, that's acting.
And to have an acting partner in the early part of the schedule as Joseph and I, we complemented each other.
Not unlike myself, son of a well-known actor. And so I think we had a certain kinship about that.
And so I think it was that, these are these two guys who came together, and the Victor Reed early relationship is a result of that.
After I got the audition, I didn't know that much about Fantastic Four, so I needed to do a little research. And I went to this comic book store and looked up all the Fantastic Four, and my initial reaction was just, you see pictures of Sue Storm, and at the time my hair was like shoulder length and blonde. I was like, oh, she looks like me. So it was that immediate, oh, this will be good.
No, I got this call that, hey, we want you to, audition for this movie called The Fantastic Four. I thought, okay, good, I'm Ben Grimm. Well, Ben Grimm turned the thing, I'm gonna do the whole character. And then when I found out that they already hired the stunt guy, I'm like, what? I was pissed. I was really freaking pissed.
Seems Loverboy is not quite himself today. Kill him.
Even though later on, I understand the reason why.
And Michael's like 6'5". I mean, he's tall and broad. And so it's funny, if you watch the movie close enough, when Ben morphs into the Thing, instead of being Ben morphing out into the thing. It's Ben, then he kind of morphs into then he morphs a little littler, smaller, because he was just so big to begin with. And so I just think if it would have jumped backwards, and if that suit was actually built on Michael, that would have been huge.
They had me auditioning for the role of Alicia, and I went in there, and I'm from New York originally, and that's sort of where I studied acting, and so I was more of a theater actor at the time, and so coming into a room of, you know, Hollywood models, I was very intimidated, and I was shorter than them, and so I go in there, and I do this scene, and I remember it was a pretty emotional scene. They wanted me to go sort of over the top or be, you know, very emotional in it. And so I did the audition, and then they were like, wow, where are you from? You can actually act. So I kind of think that they were seeing like a lot of models who maybe couldn't act or something. And I'm like, I'm not that good, so.
So we started casting on December 1st, 1992. And I know this because I throw nothing away, and I have the original sign-in sheet from 1992, and it says, December 1st, 1992, Fantastic Four, Victor Vaughn, AKA Dr. Doom. And it's interesting to note some of the people who auditioned for us on this little film back then. One day we saw Mark Ruffalo, who would find fame later on in another Marvel franchise. We saw Renee O'Connor. We read Nick Cassavetes for Victor Von Doom, and Titus Welliver, who is now a huge television star. We read Melora Walters for the role of Ben Grimm. We read Patrick Warburton.
After we all got cast, the director, Oli Sasson, he wanted everybody to just get together, at least for one meeting, to kind of just touch base, because this was quick, you know? I mean, this is an incredibly short amount of time to accomplish what you think would be huge for a sci-fi movie, a comic book movie. So we all go to Oli's house. In his pep talk to us was, okay, gang, here we all are, and we realize that there is not the money involved for this production that normally a movie of this kind or caliber would need to pull off, especially all the special effects.
Ole had some very strong ideas about how this guy, you know, that he wanted to see the tyrant, he wanted to see the king. He even told me later, he says, you know how Mussolini, you know, would stand on those balconies, and he would gesture like this and cross his arms, and he just had this pomp to him. And Ole said, I want to, you know, go for that, go for it.
The fact that it happened so quickly from the time we were hired to the time we went into production, we didn't really think of that as a red flag, or, you know, unbeknownst to us, we had to do it because they were on a deadline to get a film shot before a certain date, or Constantine was going to lose the rights to the project with Marvel. But we didn't have any clue to that. They were just saying, we're going to fast track this movie, let's get it cast, let's get it shot, let's go.
The reasons for that, of course, came out much later, and I think weren't known to anyone that was involved in actually making the movie.
So there wasn't any reason for any of us to think at this point that there was anything else going on other than we're making this movie, Roger Corman's making this movie, there's this company, New Constantine, that's on board that's making this movie, and the movie will get made and come out.
You know, when you're lucky enough to work as a young actor, sort of learning your craft as a Padawan in the world, and you can become part of the Concord New Horizons stable, Roger. And then you start working like right up to Christmas, and then maybe you'll have a day off, but you gotta come and hurry back. You gotta figure that there's something else here as well.
So I had no idea that this turmoil with Constantine and Corman, and all that crap was going on, you know? I mean, put me in the suit and throw me down.
I wasn't really gonna busy myself speculating about why is this film being made, or I mean, why does any film get made, you know? Certainly not for the reasons that this one, I guess, did.
And actually, prior to shooting, one of the producers and I went up to Steve Rabiner, and I went over to Constantine Films' offices and sat in a conference room with them. And for some reason, they were really curious to know how I was going to make the movie. And in hindsight, I go, why did they even bother?
There was no rumors, nothing in the wind that this movie wasn't going full steam ahead. And one of my most vivid recollections is how this film was going to be different. Everyone at the company, myself included, believed this film would get a theatrical release. It was guaranteed. Now, way up at the top, maybe they weren't planning that, but all of us were.
We're going to do some business. I would hope that it would be spectacular business, but hopes have been dashed before. But I do think we had a very good chance.
I met the rest of the cast on the first day. There was no table read. There was no time for any of that.
There was no rehearsal before shooting, and usually there was really no rehearsal when we were shooting. It was primarily blocking.
Miss Storm?
Behind you. And so whether it was the going invisible, and it's like stand there like this, okay, then you drop out of it, and then they shoot it, and it's like, okay, come back up. I mean, it was just that basic.
And with Roger Corman, no monitor. We didn't have a monitor when we were working with Roger Corman. Roger Corman, we had an old Arri BL and short end film stock. We didn't even have film stock that had the same emulsion numbers.
We were together all the time. And so even when we weren't on set, it's not like, oh, everybody would split off and go do their own stuff. We hung out together. And then Joseph, being Dr. Doom, Joseph was usually never in the room with us. He was in, I guess there was like another little dressing room or something like that. And he was solitary and would always be studying.
I think the cast members for this film, particularly all the leads, were so genuinely involved in the characters of the Fantastic Four.
Look at you. The Fantastic Four.
They came to the set so well prepared and with such enthusiasm.
Alex was always, organized, in charge. I mean, he had all of the answers.
99,792.458.
Which was so Reed Richards. I mean, he took a real leadership role, and he likes that. And it was really good because you would trust him, you'd let him. He was just the absolute natural leader.
And Alex had been around probably the industry, longer than anybody else kind of thing. And so he kind of just took on that leader role.
Alex's character, Reed, I had a mad crush on. So, of course, you're terribly shy with him.
Anywhere you want to go, I'm there.
I mean, it's so funny, it just still gives me goosebumps. Isn't that funny? Because just that feeling of, you're so normal around everyone else, and then the one person that makes your heart pitter-patter, you can't talk.
The great thing about Roger at the lumberyard in Venice, with people like Jonathan Demme and all these wonderful folks, Zemeckis, who have come through, is that you felt that it was a rite of passage to be playing a lead role. And therefore, the actors who were playing those lead roles, Michael Bailey Smith, Joseph Culp, Jay Underwood, Rebecca, were good actors. Good in the sense that they had been working, they had earned this spot. You see, you can't just be a good actor and expect Roger to embrace you. You need to instill in him the confidence that you can do it under his schedule and his budget, which really means technically you need to be good.
For this, there's always a scientific explanation for everything. Ain't that right, Ben?
What should we do?
First thing we're gonna do is get some rest. Maybe we can think more clearly in the morning.
Whether those are the characters in the comic book or not, I would argue that, yeah, they're good. It doesn't really matter because we will make that set work.
And then there's the studio, the Venice stage, as we called it. And the studio is movie history. It's fabulous.
We were in a condemned barn. The fire marshal had told us had told Roger, you need to tear that down. It's not safe.
And it was kind of in this little industrial section, it's not driving on to, Sony Studios or Warner Brothers, or, you go through the big studio gates and like, wow. It's just this little warehouse in a nondescript warehouse kind of neighborhood. And you turn in and you go, there's a studio here?
You open a door to one of the editing bays, and on the back of the door, which they normally kept closed, is a sign that says this building has been condemned.
And so at the beginning, you either made the choice to go, hey, we are gonna jump on board and do the best we can and have a good attitude about it, or you're going to have the attitude that I'm gonna whine and complain because, it's dirty, or it's not big enough, or, my dressing room's, too small, or there's ants over here.
And we did have a cat named Lucy that was pest control, because we would have rats crawling behind all the sound blankets. There were sound blankets all over the editing room, and you'd see the sound blankets sort of pushing forward as rats would go, in the sound blankets. And Lucy would chase after them, and then she would, she grew to love us, so she would bring us presents.
And the joke was, watch your step, because you've been warned. This is condemned for a reason.
And they were recycling a set from a movie called Carnosaur. And a lot of that stuff was, foam. And it does look cheap.
And then the film would be over, and we would get a can of paint and maybe some Dixie cups, staple them to the wall, paint them, and you have a funky looking, futuristic, high-tech sci-fi laboratory that, as long as you never shoot it in close-up, it looks fine.
While we were filming the movie, they started bringing reporters around the set. The one that gave us the cover and did us the greatest service was a magazine called Film Threat.
Chris Gore was on the set for the entire shoot.
And at that moment, Film Threat felt like it was gonna break big. We thought Film Threat was gonna be the next big fan magazine. It was gonna be Fangoria. It was gonna be Famous Monsters of Filmland. And he was terrific. He came on set and he wrote a great piece.
I believe I was the only journalist that was on set during the entire filming of the movie. I don't think anybody really knew that this movie was happening. There wasn't a lot of buzz or press about it, other than maybe a line or two in the trades that it was being made. While I might have officially been on the set as a journalist, I really didn't care. I was there really as a fan. Seeing those characters for the first time, it was just one of those things where I got very emotional, because it just brought me back to my childhood. The more time I spent on the set, unfortunately, the realization began to sink in that this was a Roger Corman production. So maybe it wasn't going to be quite as big budget as, say, Richard Donner's Superman. While both films are similar in the sense that they used spandex as to costume the superpowered characters, the craftsmanship on the Fantastic Four left something to be desired, unfortunately.
I know there are times when you see our number and it's kind of tucked below our belt, like our belt's coming up over the number, and it's just not quite right. Or if there was a close-up, you could kind of see that they were just kind of sewn on.
And Ollie's like, but you made these.
Well, what do you think?
He just really, it's like, you just own it. I mean, Sue went out and sewed these. If you really think about it, Sue made these. I have no idea what this costume designer had as a budget for this film, but it was next to nothing. I mean, this guy had all the clothes, they're all my clothes. Everything that I wear is mine, except for the wedding dress and the Fantastic Four thing, and when we had the hazmat, the yellow things on,
You got there, Johnny.
and the spacesuits.
And they pulled out some spacesuits for us to wear. And you go, you've got to be kidding me. Oh my word. Cheeseball low budget spacesuits. That was funny. That was funny.
I did see the limousine shot as it drove away and this big bendy arm come up and do this. And I went, oh, that's interesting. I'm not so sure about that effect.
Stan Lee came out to the set when we were shooting this film, because you have to go back and remember, they were not doing the big budgeted Marvel movies. And this was, you know, one of his babies that was being filmed.
He, at the time, seemed enthused enough about it. You know, I don't know what was really going on in his mind.
Between takes, he came up to me and he said, he goes, Michael, I have to tell you, you are what I envisioned Ben Grimm to be. I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. And I, at the time, didn't really know how the gravity of that, what that meant. And I didn't really know Stan Lee as much as, you know, how huge of an icon he is. So that really meant a lot.
I have to say I didn't know who he was at the time, and but then after meeting him and then other people telling me, you met Stan Lee, then I realized, oh, okay, he's a big deal.
I think that he was a presence on the set. He wasn't there, but Stan Lee was a presence, and I think every single level production kept that in mind.
And then when we did the whole San Diego Comic-Con, he was already on some other project, I don't know what it was, and someone asked him, so what do you think about the Fantastic Four? And he says, well, I don't think much of it. And when we heard that, that really hurt. I mean, like, are you kidding me? And then we felt like, okay, now it's us against the world.
People don't usually remember after they get the check. They say, actually better. Stan Lee, for God's sake. He'll pretend now that it... What? No, there's never made. Absolutely never. I would not allow that. Oh, yeah? How many times did you visit the set of our film, Stan? You have a nice time? Yeah. He brought the donuts once. Okay?
A Fantastic Four movie in the works. It is not only in the works, it's just about finished. It'll be released sometime, I think, the end of this year. And I'm not expecting too much of it. It's the last movie to be made that we at Marvel had no control over. Our lawyers just gave the rights to Roger Corman to do the movie. There will be no other projects like that. Everything after that, we're doing ourselves.
The end of production happened unceremoniously.
I don't think there was ever a cast and crew screening. I don't think there was an official wrap party even, which is always not a very good sign.
We definitely were cutting as quickly as we could. And this was on film. Nothing was digital. We were cutting on moviolas. And so we were working fast. You start cutting on the first day. Usually you have your assembly done a week after principal. And then you start working with the director.
We made movies fast, which means we edited them fast. And my first sign that something was up with the Fantastic Four was the time, the duration between screenings. All of a sudden, we weren't screening Fantastic Four anymore.
They just kind of let it languish in post for some reason. We were scratching our heads going, wait a minute, Roger's cut a trailer. He's showing a trailer in the movie theaters, but why are we not finishing the movie?
My feeling is like, if I'm going to do a movie, it becomes my baby along with the director. And so, you know, we're going to keep working on it, you know, however much we can until it's pried away from our hands.
My editor and I, Glenn Garland, I had been hired before the Fantastic Four was finished to go make another movie for another company in town. And while I was editing that movie, after everybody left the production office, I'd take that movie off the flatbed reels and put the Fantastic Four up. So we were actually posting and finishing the movie sort of in a clandestine sort of operation, just to get the film done.
Something was starting to take shape of an unknown quantity, perhaps a secret, perhaps people not being told all the facts, some non-disclosure. Hard to tell.
I remember Steve Rabner, you know, got a bit annoyed with me because I started calling a lot and saying, hey, what about stills? And hey, what about I Want a Mask? And hey, when are we doing Doom's last shot?
Here's to the future, my friend.
Which was him falling, into the green screen below. And he goes, well, we'll let you know, And he was just putting me off, like, oh, I got a crazy actor here.
The head of post-production for Roger Corman at the time was sneaking stuff out to us and getting it snuck into the lab under some other film titles.
Roger did continue to pay me my salary and not put me on one of his other movies because I believe that Ole felt that it was very important. We had become very close collaborators at that point, and we're very closely aligned on the visual effects. And so I think he felt that he needed, somebody who was going to be his right-hand man through this really hard battle that we were going through. So we started with a effects supervisor who had gotten the job on the Fantastic Four originally because he claimed to have done the visual effects for Independence Day.
Flame on!
I think we realized pretty early on that maybe he was one of the artists, but he was not the visual effects supervisor. I believe it seemed that he was way over his head.
I think he was a little nuts, actually. He talked a big game, and he had all this equipment, but he was just a strange guy. He didn't really know what the hell he was doing. He didn't have any clue.
It seemed that he was going to try to deliver stuff that he couldn't possibly deliver. He had all this pie-in-the-sky idea of all these great visual effects. And we were turning over shots to him to start doing visual effects very early on. And we were waiting and waiting and waiting. And then he would send us something, and we'd say that's totally unacceptable. And so we went back and forth with visual effects for a long, long time.
And at the end of the day, he just abandoned us.
We ended up going to a place called Mr. Film. And this guy, he was fantastic. He worked so hard, and he gave us as much as he possibly could. We would have loved to keep working on it and making them better. However, there was no money to continue.
It was all over with. There was no more money coming from Corman. It was over. It was just, and we just finished it.
Hang on, Victor.
Literally, I went to Mike Elliott, the producer there at the time, and said, Mike, I gotta go shoot a scene of Dr. Doom sitting on a throne so Mr. Film can do something in post in the computer world and put it in the movie.
Very good.
And he said, well, what do you need? I said, I needed like 2 rolls of film and a camera. And so he loaned us the 2 rolls of film and a camera. And then later on, we were post-editing the film. We said, man, you know what? We need one more scene with the Thing out there in the world.
So the film wrapped production at the end of January 1993, and the next I hear, Steve Rabner comes to me and says, how would you like to be the Thing?
That was you!
Total, no permit, totally guerrilla. It was awesome.
Brother!
It was awesome and hot.
Yeah, and we had the 2 girls at the outside with one of the buildings, and we were looking for any place that had light.
Yeah.
That had any kind of light.
Yeah.
So I could expose the negative.
Hollywood and Vine.
Yeah, brother.
I remember it well. Isn't that funny? I would have paid to be in that suit. I was so excited.
That was you, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Roger Corman, guerrilla shooting at its best.
We were just sort of making the movie ourselves and trying to get it done through hell or high water and get it ready for our sound. We just had to live with what we had.
Pitiful. You are pitiful.
And then I did go in to do the looping because I knew, we were going to have to record Doom's speeches and a lot of it to really create a sound. And Ole was on another gig, and I talked to him on the phone, And he said, yeah, well, the stuff that we really need, we're gonna get, but I really like the sound of your voice in the mask. And when I came to the looping session and I heard it, and I went, oh no, the sound of the mask is not good. I said, no, we should do the whole thing.
I had such a unbearable hatred for you, Lee.
And they didn't have pages for everything, and they weren't planning on recording everything.
Look at it! See it!
I don't know. That was a judgment call that I never agreed with, and I do regret that the film, as we do see it now, has those sound issues, and it's not lost on anybody. There are times when Doom sounds perfectly lucid, and then there are these shots where it's like, you hear him like, and you can't hear what he's saying. And I've always been annoyed at that, and I will continue to be until we fix it.
So I went back and did 2 days or whatever in a soundstage doing the voicing over the Thing stuff.
It's clobbering time for real.
Of course, they put a little tweak on it too after, but you will notice in the film that they forgot to put the tweak on the voice right at the end. If you watch when Reed Richards and Sue Storm get married, they come out of the church and they walk down the stairs. You go, it's the part where Ben goes, hey guys, give him some room.
Hey, come on, guys. Give him some room, huh?
They didn't tweak it, so it's my voice without it tweaked. So they forgot that part for some reason. I pointed out to Ole, goes, oh, I have to go back and look at that. So.
The composers came in, David and Eric Wurst, those two brothers, did a brilliant job with this, with the music for this film.
They did a fantastic job. I was like, this movie has potential.
And they took money out of their own pocket and hired, I think it was a 40-piece orchestra. And we went into the Capitol Records building in the studio where Frank Sinatra recorded, and did all the music for the Fantastic Four down there. And I was there. I sat in the room with them while they conducted a 40-piece orchestra for the music for this little movie. And they paid for it. They didn't get that much money to do the soundtrack. I think they paid an extra $6,000 or $8,000 out of their own pocket to make this work, because they were so enthusiastic about the project. They liked the film. And I think everybody was doing this too for another reason and another motive, which was, getting a big break on this movie that could put us, up the ladder in the business where we could start getting bigger and better movies.
Part of the myth of this film is that Ole Sassoon was the illegitimate son of Vidal Sassoon, and that's not true. But I only found that out about a year or two ago. So, Ole, he was great, he was shortchanged. He was gypped. He's the guy. He's the guy who would have had. And I know he's done work, made films, but he deserved He deserved this film, even if it were to be taken away from him. He deserved a chance to make bigger films.
I get the sense from Ole that he was doing a much bigger picture than I had even thought this was. That he really thought this was going to be this big blockbuster.
So we all were looking at it as being something that could certainly help our careers. That, hey, this could really be a stepping stone. And Ole looked at it the same way.
I can't take it anymore. Look, we've got to get out of here, huh?
Just maybe this film then could actually do something for all of us, even career-wise.
I do distinctly remember that at that time in my career, it looked, felt, smelt like a break. You're going to carry an action-adventure, light, comedy, sci-fi, and it's going to get the big treatment because Marvel or New Constantine is partnering with Roger. They were under the gun to make it. There's more money than there's ever been for a Roger Corman movie, and we were expecting that they would follow through. One thing to make it in 3 or 4 weeks, it's okay, it's not a hard script, but the follow through, the editing, the CGI, the music, whatever is going to be, I think there was an expectation that that would continue to only get better.
So the months went by. I did some other projects and acted in various things, and then I got word that we were going to start promoting the film. that's what they brought me a huge box of stills of Dr. Doom.
It was July 1993. Film was in post-production, let's say. Probably more accurately, it was in post-production limbo. And I get the call from the marketing people. How would you like to introduce the Fantastic Four, the cast, to the LA Shrine Auditorium? It'll be the Los Angeles premiere. We're gonna show the trailer. The cast will be there. You'll do a big appearance.
We were screening the trailer at the Shrine Auditorium at the comic book convention. The line was out the door and around the block.
I've never seen such a crowd at the Shrine Auditorium, and I'm there every few months for the comic book conventions.
And here we were. We're the guys, we're the team, you know. There's Fantastic Four and Dr. Doom. We're signing autographs and there's fans coming up. I'll never forget. I learned a lot from Alex Hyde White because he was a really good promoter. And I remember a long line of people and I'm sitting next to Alex and this kid, you know, 10-year-old kid or whatever, came up and he waited in line to get there and he got on the microphone and he said, I just wanted to ask you, what was it like playing Dr. Doom? And I picked up my mic and I went, great. I went, thanks. And he went off. And Alex goes, oh, God, kid waited in the line all that time and that's all you gave him. And I went, oh, God, you're right. So he really taught me something there. It's like, hey, do a little spiel, do something for him. And so now you see that I talk, you know, ad nauseum.
And then Alex and Michael, and even some of the other cast members now and again, would do convention appearances. And I was pretty sure Roger wasn't paying for these appearances.
So a funny thing happened to me when we'd finished the film. I found out that I really liked this character. I liked me, and of course, like, you know, I started from a place of losing a house and a divorce and all this stuff, and the part rescued me, and it's wonderful. And I identified, you know, and I thought, come on, let's spread this good feeling. And funnily enough, and this is when I knew something was up, Roger said, well, Alex, I can't underwrite any of it, but I can give you about 1,000 stills. And to this day, I probably have 150 of them left. It's me and Rebecca, and I look like Buster Crabbe, in these black and whites. And my gosh, we toured New York City comic book store. We went to a convention in Florida. We went to Charlotte. I can't remember. The Thing head would be, they'd, oh, well, we can pay for the Thing to be transported. You couldn't pay for us, but the suit in the box, a couple $100 would go.
So we hired a publicist, and I ended up paying for it. And that's what we started doing. We started going around and to the conventions and the comic book stores and meet everybody. We went to children's hospitals, radio interviews. We did everything possible to promote this thing.
If I were asked how and why did you put together a sort of a grassroots publicity tour on your own dime to promote this film, my answer, first of all, would be, I don't know. And as Reed Richards, I'd say, because it seemed like a good idea and I had to figure out how to do it.
Alex and I, he and I are the guys that did most of this stuff and really spearheaded everything, and I was the kind of the money guy. You know, I was the naive guy, I guess you call it, and which I don't regret whatsoever. I do not regret, you know, I spent like 12 grand of my own money. I would do it again in a heartbeat if I had a shot at it. I really would. And I think it's a good, money well spent.
There's no profit in it. And there shouldn't be. The profit in it is we're giving away pictures of the movie, we're promoting the film, we're sowing the seeds for a fan reaction.
And so it was all, you know, the juggernaut seemed to be starting.
So when our cover story came out, we had a table at Comic-Con in 1993. And we had a television set up where we had a 2-hour VHS loop playing the trailer. I can still in my head hear the trailer in 2-minute chunks playing in my brain with the music from Battle Beyond the Stars. We had the cast of the Fantastic Four there, which ended up being a mob scene, and I know that we sold that weekend probably 2,000 copies of the Film Threat magazine cover story with the Fantastic Four. And everyone at that table, you know, the whole cast, they were so nice to everyone. In particular, Michael. he would sit and talk to every person. And I remember him saying, when people asked him, because you know how comic book fans can be sometimes very skeptical. Well, so is this Fantastic Four movie gonna be good? Is it gonna be any good? Because you remember Marvel's reputation at the time. And Michael would just look them right in the eye and he would just say, this Fantastic Four movie is gonna be great.
Are such things as dreams are made on?
I had heard about a big screening. In 1993, I didn't know much about the Mall of America, so I didn't know what it exactly meant, but a public screening of the film meant a lot.
We were going gangbusters, the train's moving forward. We were setting up all this stuff for the premiere at the Mall of America, all these different radio and television, local and national affiliates were all tied in. Ronald McDonald House, Children's Miracle Network. We had all this stuff, all the cast and crew, cast was going to be there for sure, Ole was going to be there.
Confidence was still pretty high, even though within that world were signs that this is not, whatever sense of urgency there was is over.
The film was done, and so all of us are starting to get excited again.
We had what we thought were as good of visual effects as we could afford. We went to sound, we were getting everything ready. Roger was talking about releasing this on, I think he was talking about like 500 screens.
The cast was going to be there live. It was kind of exciting. It was kind of like in the old days,
So we were counting down toward the end of 93. And somebody said, stop.
The film was actually going to premiere at the Mall of the Americas, I think, in Minneapolis. But I don't think anything ever happened of it. I think somebody was trying to do something without paying attention to who had the copyright.
As much as, I would want to be Robin Hood or Jesse James, at any point in my life, this was the point. And so I went out in full knowledge that I was going to promote myself and this character and this story. It was about, let's do the right thing as a storyteller. Dare we say, artist. And in order to do that, we had to construct a business scheme, an arrangement, and that might have scared New Constantine. I shouldn't think it scared Bert Eichinger, but it might have scared somebody at Fox in the middle management. And Chris Columbus was the wonderkind. Chris Columbus was a Fantastic Four fan. Fox wanted to give something nice to Chris Columbus. So all of these other pieces of information that had nothing to do with us, none of this is malicious. This is Hollywood.
I got a call from Ole saying, we just got a notification to cease and desist on all promotional stuff. And I'm going, what's going on?
Once again, it was another blow to all of us.
I think I might have talked to Alex about it, and that was it. I mean, there was nothing else we could do. It just ended.
I got this call from Ole, and he said, I hate to tell you this, but the film's not going forward. It's not going to be released.
And I go, oh man, is it? He goes, yeah. I go, all right. Fuck. All right.
And then to find out then that, wait a minute, this was planned from the beginning, was the initial understanding, so in other words, this movie was never meant to come out.
We were very surprised because the thing is, they finished the movie that if contractually all he had to do was be in production, he could have started it and then bagged it. Why spend that extra time and money and a lot of people's just sweat and blood?
Noah Constantine had this clause in their contractual agreement with Marvel and I guess with Corman as well, that they had the right to seek other avenues for another production. And they had been wrangling with 20th Century Fox to do that. And they made their deal. And so now they're going to exercise their right to shelve this film and go work on a big budget version.
Somebody wrote a check, and it probably had Mr. Eichinger's name on it. And everybody above us was satisfied. Fox, Constantine, Marvel, Perlman. Roger, whoever was at Fox who was scared witless because some barnstormers in blue suits are out there trying to pinch his project.
I don't know. I was a bit stunned, you know, I was a bit, this doesn't make sense. Is this just sort of a lag? Or the idea that it would not be released in any manner, that it would be shelved, that it would never be seen, it's hard to imagine.
I was called into the post super's office and told that the negative was being transferred out of the lab and that Roger no longer owned the print. And so that was crushing.
And then, once they took the movie away from us, then we were, you know, I was sort of like the wounded and, you know, and then I said, wait a minute, why? We're gonna let them take this movie away from us and not get anything out of it? We gotta show people that we made a movie. That's how you get another job. You gotta show them, you know, look, where's your movie? Oh, you just made a movie, where is it? Well, I don't really have a movie. Well, then you didn't really make a movie. Well, yes, I did, but I don't have it. Well, then you didn't make a movie, so beat it. So he said, we gotta get that movie. So I remember Glenn Garland and I were sneaking around in Roger's storage room in Venice, looking for the cans of that film. After everybody gone, we were in there, it's like almost like, you know, like with a flashlight, you know, like criminals. We were going in there and we were gonna risk criminal prosecution for taking that print and going over to a post house and having it telecine so we could have a decent copy of the film. But lo and behold, the film was already gone. There was no prints left around. They had confiscated everything. The negative, the work prints, the answer print. And we had one answer print made from the movie, just one. And we never could find it, and that was that.
And then they had to construct a story about that. And the story about that became, you know, this movie was never intended to be made. It was always a way to secure the rights for Marvel, because they were going through great trouble, and Chris Columbus or somebody of immense talent needs to make this film because it's a profitable franchise, and they don't want the river to be polluted. And they were all scared of it. This great myth sort of became self-justified. Look, it's like a conspiracy theory. We all try to react to shock by constructing this grand plan that requires somebody to be in charge who has the talent to do that. And that's the wrong place to look for that in this project. It just had its own destiny. And when it hit that fork in the road and went to the place of denial, you know it's in a vault in Kentucky. Don't you think when they finish making the new Fantastic Fours that they might dust this one off and, you know, what, it being 80 years old, be like the Lone Ranger going to think, you know, that was really good. I'll be telling the same story I'm telling now, is that by trying to help this film succeed in the conventional way, we probably, quite likely, sowed the seeds for its demise in a most unconventional way.
To Bernd Eichinger's credit, he did call me, and I went up to his house in Beverly Hills and sat with him, you know, in his living room, and had a cup of coffee with him, and he just told me exactly what happened. And to his credit, he said, look, I'm going to tell you what the situation is and why this movie was pulled. And he explained to me the deal with Marvel, that it happened this way. And he was sorry that, you know, I was involved and everybody else's effort was for naught. But that was it. And he told me just simply it was a contractual issue between him, or between Constantine Film and Marvel, and that was it. And then asked me if I wanted some more coffee.
What have you done?
I felt, I didn't know what to do. I felt like, you know, who do you go after? How do you know, I'm Sicilian, so I got that thing in me that says, I'm gonna go fuck somebody up for this, you know, but you can't do anything. You know, because I knew all that work, all the effort, all the sweat, all the sneaking around doing the post, all the work that the actors did, the special effects, that everybody's blood, sweat, tears, heart, soul, effort that went into making this little movie, they just flushed it down the toilet. It's gone. That's it. Didn't happen. What you guys just did not happen.
Why all this mystery?
I think if you're going to pull a con, you just don't tell people it's a con until you run away with a bag of money. Oh my God, did we just get caught? That son of a bitch.
We just made this movie that we were all hoping would have gotten us a leg up in the business, and they just pulled it from under us. And that was that. And no additional compensation, no, hey, gee, you know what, maybe we'll compensate you guys down the road. Nah, man. And I was like, sorry, it's over, goodbye.
How many movies did Roger Corman make and never release? 1.
Why not release the film? It's certainly going to make you some money. We certainly wouldn't have done the appearances and the comic book conventions, and Corman would not have, printed up, all these posters and headshots and spent all that money. And so I think he probably, as a good businessman, he said, fine, I'll take the money and I'll cut my ties with this thing and let it go. And that's the hard, cold truth of Hollywood, I guess,
Roger called me after the fact and said, Ole, I want to thank you. I just got a check for $1 million from, and I was going, gee, that's great, Roger. And the movie then went off the shelf. It was gone. They pulled it. And I think it was because, and it only makes sense that he used the finished film as a little more leverage to collect a bigger paycheck, other than just the production expenses that he was paid and his markup on production expenses from Constantine. So apparently everybody did well with the movie except us, except the ones that made the movie and the ones that acted in the film, and we all just got, kicked in the teeth, and that was that.
At the time, one just deals with the realities. Finally, it's over, okay, and we're not going to have the premiere. And then, later the conspiracy aspect of it, the business sense aspect was rather interesting for me to try to unravel. And I think it's come down that Avi Arad was the one person who knew what he was doing in this.
In October of 1993, Avi Arad has his first really big success. He sells the rights to the X-Men movie to 20th Century Fox. He's already had a working relationship with Fox because he was heavily involved with the Fox cartoon on Saturday mornings. And Avi Arad is really eager to make movies and really eager to make big movies. And when he finds out that there's a low-budget Fantastic Four movie coming along, maybe he's not that excited to see what's going to happen with it. Maybe he would rather just call the shots on every movie that has anything to do with Marvel. When Avi heard this, he went to the telephone, and the details of the conversation that he had, and specifically who he was even speaking to, are maybe up for some debate.
I don't think Roger really knew from the beginning. I think he was duped just as much as we were, which is really sinister. But, if you've got a secret that you need, it's a life and death secret, or it's to either to keep the franchise or lose the franchise, you don't tell anybody. You can't afford to do it. And that's what they did. I mean, it was lockbox, it was, this is it. We're not letting this secret out. If we do, we're going to be nuked, So I think that's, the importance of them not telling anyone, including Roger, that this thing was going to be doomed.
Avi, I think, wanted control of Marvel in order to save it. Look what's happened. And when you look at it that way, my gosh, what a wonderful sort of cog in the wheel.
I might be even betraying myself in our own movie for saying it, but I kind of see Avi Arad's perspective on it. They wanted to come out with this franchise, big and with a splash. And in a way, maybe Marvel is not really the bad guy so much as it is Constantine Film, because maybe they were secretly hoping that they didn't make the movie, so they could get the rights back and go do it elsewhere. Because in the end, Marvel Productions and what they've become today made them billionaires.
Roger, about 16 months later, he gave me a film to do.
Unknown Origin, starring Alex Hyde White.
Yeah, they really liked what you did for them. And that made it okay.
After that, bound to Eichinger, I was up for a film to direct in Prague, and my agent sent me over and I interviewed with these guys, and I think Bernd said, hire Oli because he's good and he's fast. And I gotta tell you, going to Prague and making a film was one of the best experiences of my life. That was a great, great experience. And the film turned out really, really well. And then when we were posting the film in Munich, I happened to walk into a restaurant with the editor, and we went there to eat, and Bernd Eichinger was sitting against the window having dinner by himself. And I went over to say hello to him, and he goes, "Oh, Oli, how's the film? Everything good?" I said, "Yeah, it went well, man. I wanted to thank you for, at least throwing me a bone." And so we sat down, and they have dinner, and the next thing we know, Bernd Eichinger sent over a bottle of Dom Perignon.
The irony of the Fantastic Four movie is that it has been seen by more people than probably would have ever seen it in its initial release, had it been released. This is the great irony, because before long, tapes were circulating in underground comic book conventions.
I went to a convention. There's rows of people that are signing and rows of movies and stuff that are just kind of stacked up. And I was just kind of floating around, and I picked this thing up, and I went, "Oh, this is me. Wow, that's really cool." And I said, "Yeah, when did you guys get this?" And he said, "Oh, they've been floating around, and because I can't get a real copy." He said, "Would you like that?" And I said, "I'd love it." He goes, $10.
I was at a party, and this guy comes up to me and he goes, "You look so familiar to me. I know you. And throughout the party, he was trying to figure it out. And finally, he comes up to me and he goes, "You're Alicia." And I'm like, "Yes." And I go, "How do you know? Did you work on the movie?" He goes, "No, I saw the movie." I'm like, "Where? I haven't even seen the movie." So he told me that there are copies on eBay. And so that night I went home and I bought a copy on eBay.
Somebody had told me that they were at a comic book convention. They bought me a copy. And I was kind of thrilled that, all that hard work at least was going to get seen by somebody. By some fan was going to see it as like something special that, the lost tapes.
Where copies started coming from, who knows? But in any case, they started showing up. And so what you started to see happen was, you started to see this little surgence of fans, comic fans, that were starting to see the movie.
So I got the copy of the film, and I took it to Lightning Dubs, and one of those places that just, does a lot of dubbing work for the TV networks and such. And I said, "Look, I just want a couple copies of this movie." And I think that's where it got leaked out. I think somebody, one of these guys that worked there at night doing dubs, in the middle of the night, saw the Fantastic Four and went, "Holy shit, I'm getting me a copy of this." So they made, 2 for me and 1 for them. So I think whoever that is, wherever he is, God bless him, because they got the film out there.
I think the film was never meant to be released. I think the film was a way for the producers to extend their option on the material at a very, very low cost. And I think that this was a development cost. I am a writer. I've seen scripts be written and then thrown away, and this is the equivalent of that. This was just a draft of the film that was tossed away, and it's written off on production cost.
The story that I heard was that Avi Arad was in Puerto Rico, and he was talking to this kid who said, "Are you going to be, going to that Fantastic Four premiere?" And Avi said, "What Fantastic Four premiere?"
Marvel does have the movie. They own it, you know, that it's, for all we know, I think the comment from the fellow who ran Marvel or runs Marvel was that, you know, yeah, we burned it or it got burned or something, but it's probably, we would imagine, in some film vault somewhere. I can't imagine he, you know, burned it. Ding dong.
My guess is it's somewhere, that they wouldn't be that cruel as to demolish a piece of celluloid, regardless of what's on it. Because if you believe that they have even an ounce of filmmaker inside their blood, they're not going to destroy film. You know, because that's not what we do. People don't destroy film if you're a filmmaker. You try to preserve film. So my guess is that somewhere that negative is still preserved and tucked away somewhere. I would hope.
What's the harm? There are Criterion collections. There are reboots of old Hugh O'Brien, Have Gun Will Travel. There's all sorts of things out there. The niche market has been created, all right? Why wouldn't there be a warm welcome for this film? And that's a very good question, and I think the question itself gives you the answer. Is that yes, it'll come out. When it is viewed as a tangible asset by whoever is left over,
The perfect offering.
somebody's gonna find this. Somebody's gonna find this project. The great, untold, never-seen version, the original Fantastic Four. You telling me that wouldn't sell a few DVDs, for crying out loud? The fact that it never was released, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's about giving this film its third act. And I'm sure it'll happen. And I hope that when my 12-year-old grandchildren are old enough in the early 21st century, that it does happen, that they'll remember that that was your great-grandfather, because it's not going to happen now.
You'll certainly, you know, make some money. They'll make some money. You'll make some money on it. People will buy copies of this DVD or downloads, whatever it's going to be, or put it on a special features with, you know, the other Fantastic Four movies. I don't know. It just seems like it needs its due, and there's people out there ready and waiting to get it.
It's too bad that in today's world with the options of media play that it can't find a home, or it hasn't found a home yet. You know what? It's all about this.
I've said to this day, and I go on record as saying, if we ever can, people will see fit to release this film, I'll go back in and redo any of the doom speeches to get it all nice and perfect, but I'm not holding my breath.
It's a shame, because I think what they should do is take the film and release the film in its original state. And I would hope that because of the CGI that's out there today, take the film and everywhere there's a CGI effect in the original film, see what the film really could have been if we had a little bit more money to make the CGI equivalent to what the CGI is today. And then release it as a double, you know, DVD. You know, and they would make a fortune. The fact that the film never got the treatment that it should have gotten, even in post, was like another stab in the heart, because you said, damn, we made a good-looking movie. And nobody, you know, and what do we get for it now? We've got, you know, bootleg copies, which is VHS to VHS 10 times. And that's what people see. And they go, yeah, that movie, well, you know, it's okay, but it looks like shit. Well, no wonder it looks like shit. I know that when they did the telecine for the trailer, which was a negative transfer to tape, and man, it looked awesome. It really looked good.
I look back and in some ways, because of it not coming out, I think it has had a bigger life than maybe if it did come out.
My kids, I have two boys, you know, they protect their dads as much as possible, so they knew what happened with the Fantastic Four. But even like when the new bigger versions came out, they said they wouldn't go see them because, you know, that would be like them cheating on their dad.
Is it the perfect, definitive Fantastic Four movie? No. But we did our damn best job that we possibly could with the resources we had to make that happen.
Nobody ever thought that it would have this kind of life, but I'm really glad that it did. It's really the audience. Like, this film wouldn't be around if it wasn't for the comic book fan base, because they're the ones that have kept it alive all this time. It wasn't really anything that we did. It's the fact that they wanted it and they kept wanting it, and they seem to still want it.
In the end, you know, this is I think it was a great blunder on their part. I think, you know, it took 10 years or more to make another Fantastic Four movie. In the meantime, none of us reaped any benefits from making this film, except my son, you know, who I gave him the tape when he was probably about 3 years old. And he started watching his old man playing Dr. Doom and running around the house with his action figure and imitating my laugh, imitating the lines, right to a T, and I suppose that gave me more joy than probably anything. I don't feel bitter about it or anything like that. You know, it was a job. I did, I think, I did my utmost to bring it to life. I did my part. I'm proud of it, you know. I got to be the first Dr. Doom. Nobody's going to take that away from me. It would just be nice to see it a little further out there so the public could have a laugh.
No, you know, I was angry the first day I heard that the thing was being pulled from Bernd Eichinger. You take what you can get, and we got an opportunity to make a movie about the Fantastic Four. And I never lost the feeling that we had when we were hired to do the film, because it was the Fantastic Four. So I'm not bitter about it at all, frankly, and I'm not angry about it. And, you know, yeah, you can't just go around thinking about what if, you know, because that's over. You know, you gotta let go of the past and embrace the future. That way you can live in the present, you know, and that's what we do. I mean, it's the movie business, and life is not fair. It's like, you know, forget about it, Jake, it's Chinatown.